So let's talk about it. Why you are stuck and how to unstuck yourself. Now, most people are going through constant cycles in life where unfortunately they're in a place of stagnation. You know that you have all these grandiose goals. You want all of these things to play out so you can then feed your family for generations. You want to be able to build that legacy for yourself. You want to be able to actually be happy and fulfilled in life. But for some reason, things just aren't clicking. It's just not happening. There's no progression, no matter how much you feel overworked and tired, and how much you feel like you are burned out. You've been making all of these movements, all of these decisions, all of these plays, and you just feel like you're just stuck in that same space. Now, a lot of the time, it boils down to the cycle that you're in. And we need to understand how to break ourselves out of these cycles. Because if you continue this cycle, you're always going to get the same result repeatedly, which is you staying stuck, staying burned out. You've been fully immersed into this reality where things just don't change no matter how much you do, no matter how much you try, no matter how much you you read books and whatever it may be. Like, we like to consume content, we like to read and watch stuff, but without that action or the redirection of actions, you're always going to stay in the same place. Right? They say insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly, expecting different results. That's a quote from Albert Einstein. Very wise words. So you need to figure out where you're repeating certain things in your formula. You need to think about what variables in your formula can you actually change to create that different result for yourself. For example, to understand what we're talking about here, you have to understand habits, how they form, how to replace them, if you can even replace them, if you can even remove them, how they work, and understanding yourself. It all plays in together, it's all a loop. Because at the end of the day, it's all a system. So the reason why you're in these cycles of you repeating your destructive habits, you repeating that self-destruction, you're repeating that feeling of burnout, you're repeating that stagnation, and it's just stringing along for years and years and years and years and years. You're just failing to understand why it's happening. It's because of your habits. It's the number one reason why. Now, sometimes these habits may form from belief systems or whatnot. That's a conversation that we might have to save for another day. But we need to think about why we form these habits, how to solve it, so that means we can actually move forward and progress in life. So let's take a look over here. We've got cycles here. Okay. It all comes from, first and foremost, habits, right? So the habits form in our minds. Now, there's a particular process for this, but to really examine this process, we need to understand the 3 steps to it, right? So first and foremost, habits is simply, when you break it down, is a cue that's followed by some sort of routine that's then rewarded or reinforced by a reward. And then you repeat the same process next time you have a similar cue or the same cue. And then the more you do it, the more it creates this efficiency, right? So let's break it down first. So cues. The reason why cues are important to understand is because you have to think about it like this. There's internal and then there's external triggers for anything. External triggers will be things that happen without you, right? So things that happen outside of your body. It might be a certain event. It might be you getting fired from your job or having an argument with your spouse. It might be boredom. It might be the time of the day. It might be as simple as maybe you have deadline for something that you've been needing to do, but you keep on procrastinating. The internal trigger is different. The internal trigger is probably the most important. The internal trigger is what happens in here. So that's the stress. That's the feeling like you lack control over something. That's feeling like overwhelmed. It's confusion. It's maybe the external trigger for something. let's say, for example, let's think about a goal that some of you might have. Some of you might have a goal with your fitness journey. So when it comes to fitness, you know that to lose weight, what do you have to do? You have to stop eating bullshit. You have to get up, be more proactive, go to the gym, get your 10K steps in, drink water, sleep good, eat good. We know that's how you actually lose your weight. We know this already. So why do we fail to lose weight? It's because of your habits. So when it comes to the cue, you might have an external cue. Right, that's external trigger. That external trigger might be a snack. Maybe you're somebody who lives at home with family. Maybe you're somebody who has an office space and you get a little bit peckish sometimes. So you have a little snack drawer. They just dip a little pack of crisps out every now and then, dip a pack of sweets or whatever it may be. This is an external trigger. You've walked past the office space and you've seen your snack drawer. So what do? You know what? I'm a little bit peckish. Let me quickly just go. Put in your pocket. You bring it with you. When you start feeling peckish, you open up. You start eating it. That's an external trigger, right? You've seen something or you experienced something that has encouraged you to take a certain action, right? Because what happened there was very simple. You had an internal trigger, which may have been, oh, I'm hungry. The external trigger was, oh, the snack drawer right there. Let me quickly go to my snack drawer. Then the routine plays out. The routine is simple. You actually go to the snack drawer, you open that door, or you open that drawer, or you go into the cupboard and you take out that snack and you pop it open and then you eat it. The reason why we're engaging with this routine is because that our brain is anticipating to be rewarded from engaging with that routine. Because that cue has caused some level of discomfort. That cue has allowed us to perceive or anticipate for some sort of resolution for that discomfort or that lack of something, right? And sometimes it might even be just the fact that you've got dopamine receptors and your brain's like, you know what, this thing here is giving us dopamine, let's get more of it, right? So in the beginning stages, when you are in this process, you're going to utilize your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex is a part of your brain where if you're using this part, it's going to be it's going to be conscious effort. So when you're picking up that snack to begin with, the first time you did it, that took conscious effort. You had to consciously go to the store, buy the snack, you bring it home, you pack it into the cupboard. That's conscious effort to bring that snack into your household. Now, as you repeat this decision again and again and again and again and again, you then put yourself in a scenario where your brain has done this so many times, it's now formed a pattern. And it's formed that pattern. It's now delegating the decision-making process to another section of the brain, right? This section is called the dorsal striatum. This is part of the basal ganglia. And this is when your brain actually encodes that information that you've just given to it into the procedural memory, where you're going to start turning things into procedures, right? Processes. You see this trigger, therefore this problem arises, therefore it's solved by adding this thing to the problem. Right? So that is how we end up being in that position where now, you've gone from you never really having snacks in your drawer, never really comfort eating, never really eating out of stress or boredom or whatever it may be, to now that's exactly what you do. So with that being said, you've gone from you having that cue to you now having that routine or forming a routine. The final stage is the reward. So the reward is the actual, you open up the bag of crisps. That in itself can be satisfying because you just had that internal trigger. You know when you open up a pack of crisps and you hear the bag just breathe, and then you put the crisps into your tongue, you bite down, that crunch, the flavor, that's giving you that dopamine, right? Dopamine is that hormone in you that basically it's released typically when you're experiencing pleasure. So the brain is a pleasure-seeking mechanism. It likes to seek pleasure. So when it decides that this action here is going to give me pleasure, it's going to find ways to encourage you to take more of that action, right? So what ends up happening is that because you've had pleasure attached to this reward, you now want to engage with that particular sorry, not the reward, once it attaches to the routine, you then start to engage that routine more because your brain perceives as, oh, I'm going to get more pleasure from it. Even though long term, if you keep on engaging with that same routine, you're going to get the opposite. You're going to get fat, you're going to get sluggish, you're going to get slow, you're going to get heart problems, you're going to get diabetes, you're going to get all of these different problems that come with that same cue, routine, reward. So there's something that's going on in your process right now where you are creating this same outcome that you have right now. The same consequence of your action. There's always a cause for every effect. So if you're experiencing a certain effect right now, whether it's you're fat, whether it's you're unfocused, whether it's you constantly procrastinate, it could be that every time you set a goal for yourself to do something, you always fall short. Chances are it's the habits, because the habit is basically the system that you're using to create certain outcomes. So you have to change things in systems to achieve the results you want to get. Right, myself, I'm a business owner. I have multiple businesses. I've been in business for years. The key between every business's success will always be the levels of systems and the ability to consistently stick to systems. If you can't consistently stick to systems, that's going to become a problem. And that's where habits can really make things easier for us. It turns uphill battles into downhill battles. Because when you have a habit that aligns with your goal, it's no longer, oh, I have to do this. It's, oh, I'm already doing it. My feet are moving. I don't even know why. People ask me like, bro, how do you always work so hard? Why are you always working? It's just, it's normal for me. This is habitual. Obviously, I have my rest days. I have to insert that now, but you know, it's normal for me. It's now, and because that habit has created a certain result, that's also created a certain level of standards. You always rise and fall to the level of your standards. Not only that, but with your systems, you always rise and fall to the level of your systems as well. If your system can produce a particular result, and you're inputting, it's always formulaic. If you're putting certain variables into a formula, you're going to get the same result. When you change the variable, that's when you get a different result. 1 + 1 will always equal 2 until you add in another +1 to add in or to factor in. Now it's 3. You see what I'm saying? So when it comes to that reward system, you know, that's a result of the nucleus accumbens, and that's when it releases the dopamine. That's when it spikes the dopamine, either in anticipation for a reward or for when you actually receive the reward. Now, as you engage in this process, your brain is storing the information, right? And as it stores this information, you have to understand where it's storing it. It's storing it in the basal ganglia, and when it's doing that, it's creating neural circuits and pathways and so forth. This allows your brain to always retrace back to where it was previously, right? It's like a navigation unit. When you have those neural pathways that links to where it once was to that destination, it's like when you go to school or when you go to work. If you can go there from your home to the local train station or directly to where your destination is or to that bus stop, you know exactly where to go. The reason why is because you've taken that same route, so you know exactly which route to go, and typically you're going to go down the same route. And because you take that same route, you get to a destination a lot more quickly, a lot more efficiently. But if you were to divert and go into an unknown direction that you've never been on before, you're going to take a little bit more longer to get there, most likely. It's the same thing with the brain, right? So the brain creates these different pathways to allow you to get to the definite destinations a lot more efficiently, a lot more quickly. So instead of wasting time for the decision-making process to understand whether you should take this action or this action, what the routine is, it will see the cue, it will tether it to what you previously have done in your routine, and then you will get the same reward that you previously got when you had the same routine and cue beforehand. So it's creating that system. Do you see that? So a lot of people don't realize the system is being created. So the actual process is called I believe it's called myelination. I might pronounce that incorrectly. So with this particular part of the process, you've got different neural connections being built up between this, where you are now, and where that destination is, right? Where you are now is just where you've just seen that cue. The destination is receiving that reward. It's gonna fit in that routine in the middle. So as it does that repeatedly, again and again and again and again, that same mechanism, right? The myelin, it begins to thicken, right? It begins to create like a fatty layer over it, and that insulates that neural pathway. So as it shoots those electrical signals, think about insulation. It's going to happen a lot more efficiently. It's going to happen a lot more faster. That's why as soon as you experience something, you automatically know something. That's why when you look at a table, you don't question if it's a table or not, because your brain has seen a table so many times that's able to look at a table and say, oh, this is a table. Why? Because it's got 4 legs or 2 legs and it's got a long flat surface on the top. It could have been a chair by that same characteristics, but because it's got that flat surface on the top that's a lot more elongated, you're gonna say with confidence, oh, this is, your brain's always gonna assume this is the table. It's gonna assume it's a chair. It's tall and wider. The chair for big backs. I don't think that's the case. It's not gonna say that. It's not gonna assume these things. Right? Things based upon assumption, because your brain is already engaging with so many different processes. It does not want to think about decision making on wasting mental resources on decision making that doesn't need to be decided upon, because it's already got evidence from the past, whether it's right or wrong, whether it leads to what you truly want or not. It's got evidence in the past already that suggests that this is the action that you should take. So what it's going to do is going to lean more towards that action. It's the same way how when you go into a supermarket and looking to buy some ketchup, you don't buy off-brand ketchup. You look for the Heinz ketchup. That's out of habit. That's out of habit. I don't know about you, but when I'm buying mayonnaise, I don't buy off-brand mayonnaise. I buy Hellman's mayonnaise every time. If it's not Hellman's, I walk out. I go to a different store and get the Hellman's. But it's different for other people, right? So, you need to think about that process, because the issue is this, right? As we're developing the repetition in the process, and we're creating that thick layer in the mind, you're unknowingly creating a higher chance or higher probability that you're going to take the action that's misaligned with what your true goal is. And if we're taking actions that are misaligned with what your true goal is, you always, 9 times out of 10, you always end up in the exact same position that you was in previously, the same position you're trying to get out of. It's the same thing. You're going to end up in the same place. You're going to end up poor. You're going to end up with a stagnant business that's not moving further. You're going to end up in a scenario where you're never losing weight, you're never gaining weight, which one it is that you are trying to create for yourself. So you need to think about, what can you actually do about this though? Because it's one thing to understand something. That's the first step. You have to take action. And the problem is with this is that when it comes to this entire process, the reason why a lot of people stay in the same spot as well is because that it becomes uncomfortable to meet with the reality that it's in your control to change those variables. So what ends up happening is, instead of moving towards making those changes that lead to the long-term fulfillment and happiness that you're searching for, you start looping back into those destructive habits. You start procrastinating. You start scrolling through social media. You start doing other things that are just, it's not what you're focused on at this point of time. And because that your brain sees this thing as, oh, this is painful to look at. This is a painful reality. This is painful for me to look at this situation because I have to actually address the issues that's causing the issues. I have to address the cause of the issues that's causing the effect. What does the brain do instead? It says, you know what? Let's just go back to playing video games. Let's just go back to watching YouTube videos. Let's just go back to eating more snacks. Let's just go back to masturbating. Let's just go back to doing drugs. Let's go back to cheating. Let's go back to this. Let's go back to that. Whatever it is, whatever your vice is, drinking alcohol excessively, whichever your vice is, you're actually masking the pain of having the clarity of where it is that you're going through. And that's what happens so often. So the funny part about it is it's not really funny, and you'll realize, as I say, is the funny thing is it's never really funny. But what is interesting, let's say, that's the exact routine, the exact habit that's causing you to stay stagnant, that's causing you to stay stuck, that's causing you to stay in the same place, that's preventing your ability to evolve to that next level. So we need to start thinking about what we can do about this and stop running away from the internal conversation. Because the moment you confront the truth, that's the moment when you have to actually deal with the truth. And once you have new information, it's now on you to make changes based upon the new information that you've just received. That is what's so hard for people, though. And that's why they avoid the conversation to begin with. But you can't avoid the conversation. This is the point of time when you have time to actually sit down and reflect. You have time to actually look at what is going on and be real with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Because if you are, you're going to discover that you are actually the causation. It's not your uncle. It's not your boss. It's not the economy. It's not this situation. It's not that. It's been you the whole time. And that's an uncomfortable truth to hear and to come to realization with. But it's the most powerful truth that you can come to realization, because then you realize this whole entire time you have the control to over what happens next. But if you engage in the same formulas and the same variables, you're going to get the same results. You're going to get the same outcome. So let's change it. So what can we do? So we need to have the ability to identify what habits are first and foremost. So what you need to start doing is, and this is the exercise for you guys, right? If you don't have a pen and paper, I highly suggest get a pen and paper out, open up your books, get that pen, and I want you to write down 3 things, right? Just get 3 different sections, right? If you want to, you can do a Punnett square of some sort. You can do this anyway, anyhow. Write down the cue, write down the routine, and write down the reward. And then for the final piece, write down the outcome. For example, let's say at this point of time, if you want to, you can actually reverse engineer it, right? So let's think about outcomes first. So what is the outcome? Let's say if you are somebody who's constantly poor, right? You constantly have no money, or your business isn't. In fact, let's talk about someone whose business isn't expanding. Actually, let's talk about you guys for a brief moment. So if your business is not expanding, you then have to explore why. There's a certain habit that you have that's causing the business to not expand. Because if it's persistently not expanding, that means that there's something that you're failing to do to make a change. Obviously, there's systems in your own business that might be, that might be at risk, maybe a systemic risk or wherever it may be. There's still something that you could possibly be doing. So let's take, for example, your business is failing to expand. Why? Because maybe I don't have enough money. Okay. Is that because of a lack of clientele? Is that because, people aren't paying what they're supposed to pay? Is that because that you are failing to deliver a good service? Whatever it may be. Let's explore the idea that maybe you just don't have enough money, right? You don't have enough money in your account to be able to invest into things that allow you to make more money, right? This is something you see in yourself repeatedly, again, after situation after situation after situation. So that is the outcome at this point of time. Okay, cool. So there's a certain situation, there's a certain routine there. The routine is every single time you make money in a business, you spend it. And typically when you spend it, it's not on stuff that provides more value for the business. Maybe you're irresponsibly using the business funds to pay for your lifestyle or to pay for your things and your own personal needs, right? Whether you pay it to yourself as a salary, which I would recommend, or at least as dividends. If you're paying things from your business card, that is a problem. That is a habit, right? That's a routine. So let's say that's what you're doing, because at the end of the day, when you do that, that's increasing your director's loan. Your director's loan balance, you have to pay that back as a director, right? HMRC or IRS or whoever your tax authority is, they're going to crack down on you for that. You can't make personal expenditure on your business card. Every purchase in your company's card has to be wholly and exclusively for the business and should be for the operations for the business. Anything else that's not that either should be saved up, or you can then spend it on stuff that staff like for example yourself. So that was a crazy start. I'm not gonna lie to you. So let's say if that is the situation that's happening, right? Maybe you keep on getting a director's loan balance. This is the problem, right? So there's a habit there that's causing a certain outcome, which then also hints at not enough money. So you then have this cue, routine, reward, outcome. So the reward outcome right now is that we don't have enough money. The reward is that we're going to go back to the reward. So cue. So the cue is you're in a situation where you're out and about, maybe your own personal capital. You might not have as much money at that point in time. Maybe you don't have enough money on your business card at that point in time. So your personal card. But your business card has some capital. You're out and about, maybe you're on a date. Maybe you're at an event with a friend. Whatever it may be. In your head, you're thinking, oh, I don't have enough money in my card. That's an external trigger. The internal trigger is then embarrassment. That's what it could be. It could be a feeling of embarrassment. It could be a feeling of disappointment. It could be a feeling of shame, or even guilt, because you know that you've made some mistakes in the past that allowed you to get put into that position to begin with. What's next? Routine. The routine is, let me go ahead and take out my business card instead, and let me spend that money on my business card, and then I'll get the money back through a client or for whatever it may be. Is that the right thing to do? Definitely not. Definitely not. I recommend it against it. Reason why I know this is because when in my first stages of entrepreneurship, this is stuff that I used to do. Now I don't make business purchases that aren't for business. Any post expenditures on my personal card, right? But for you, as somebody who might be in the beginning stages, or maybe you're still making that same mistake, this is something you need to keep your eye on. So that cue and that routine has now led to a reward. The reward is the relief in this instance. The reward in this instance is, oh, I get to receive the service or product that I was looking to buy, whether it's a pair of shoes or whether you're trying to pay for a meal or whatever it may be. It's sorted out. You don't have to think about it anymore. It's the ease. That is the reward in this instance. The effect of that, though, if the director's balance has increased, so that means you now owe money back to your own company, or that's going to get taxed. The effect of that is now, maybe at the end of the year, you don't really account for this. You now owe a little bit more taxes than you expect. That's happened to me before. I made these same mistakes too. And that's why it's important for you to understand where these issues are. That can act as a bottleneck in your own company. Another situation. In fact, forget about any more situations. That is the key case scenario of a habit that you might engage with. And you see how we broke it down? We broke down what the cue is. We broke down what the routine is. We broke down what the reward is. We broke down what the outcome is. So now you know there's 4 different elements to this. And these 4 different elements are going to be key to understanding what we can do about this. Because now that we understand what these identifications are, now we can actually change the current routine. Because you can now go from you making the same, habit and this whole process, you can engage in the same process that releases that same outcome, then it stresses you out even more, then you have to go back through the whole thing again. You can now then make that change. You can insert a disruptor into the routine. Because you can't really change the cue. The cue is there already. It's very difficult to do so. Some cases you can, but it's very difficult to do so. The reward, you can kind of keep that the same. Sometimes you might adjust that slightly. But the main thing that you can change that will actually bring effective changes into your life will be changing the routine. So if you can change the routine, you change everything else. Because now, at first, you get the cue. Before, the routine was, okay, let me just take out my business card and make that payment. The new routine, there's different routines in this scenario. A new scenario might be, you know what, let me send money to myself from my business account to my personal account, put money aside for my taxes, like whatever, how much it is, but depending on your tax bracket, and then I make a payment. It could also be, you know what, maybe it's actually a thing, but I can't afford this. Let me even stop bringing myself to places that I clearly can't afford it beforehand, which is even smarter to do, even wiser to do. And then wait for yourself to actually build up capital to then do that. That's a bit more of a longer term change though, right? So those are just a couple of examples of things you can do, right? Obviously, I only recommend the longer term. Sometimes there can be some longer term solutions to these problems, right? And a longer term solution to this type of problem would simply be budgeting. Actually having a budget that you stick to every single month. And then, making sure that before you go out anywhere, make sure you have enough capital to actually go out and buy the things you're looking to purchase. Or maybe the current routine is, you know what, I might buy that thing, but maybe I need to stop impulsively purchasing things. Maybe instead of buying that thing, maybe you was trying to buy a pair of shoes that you just saw you was out and about, right? Depends what you're purchasing as well. Maybe now instead of purchasing it impulsively, maybe now you give yourself time to just sit aside. Maybe say, you know what, I'm not going to make any purchase like this for 24 hours. I have to sleep on it first, wake up the next day. If I still want it, then I can buy it. Or I can save up or plan ahead to actually get this thing. Instead of me going into overdraft or whatever it may be to then get that same thing, or withdraw from my business account, whatever it may be. You can also employ an if-then basis, right? So if then, because what this means is if I experience this by this cue, then I will do this, right? So what you're doing is actually you're creating clear replacement rules and boundaries with yourself. Because now, before, you didn't really have a clue what that cue was and what the routine was and what the reward is and what the outcome was. Now you understand what the outcome is. Now you understand what the cue is, the reward, and also the routine is. So what you can then do is then recognize, okay, if I see this cue, whether it's an internal trigger or an external trigger, I will then make this decision. Right? You might choose whatever that decision is. You make that decision. You choose it so it aligns with what your true goal is, with what you truly want. What that does, you've put a clear expectation upon yourself. You've put clear standard operating procedures upon yourself on exactly what to do in different scenarios. So now you're more likely to actually go ahead and move forward with the decision that actually aligns with what your true goal is, which is to lose weight or to have more money in your bank account, to be able to reinvest back into your business, to be able to actually be loyal to your partner, to be able to be more intimate with your partner, to be able to walk your dog every day, whatever it may be. Whatever it may be. To stop doom scrolling on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and whatever it may be. These are all habits that stems from something, right? You can change the current routine very easily, and then you also reduce yourself to the exposures. You reduce the exposure of yourself to the triggers that you experience. So, for example, let's say, for example, for a lot of you, right, it might be procrastination. Procrastination might be a big issue for you, and that causes you to not really follow through, do things as much as you should, and you end up being more stressed out. Maybe you end up falling behind in certain areas. A lot of you are dealing with this, with the routine. Goodness. Literally, just doing this, just scrolling mindlessly, and you have to figure out where that comes from. Some of you are doing it from the moment that you wake up. Some of you are doing it every time you start to get stressed out, or every time work gets a little bit overwhelming, or every time that project that you're working on, you kind of feel a little bit lost and stressed out and you don't really know what to do. And then what do you do? Oh, notification. That internal trigger might be that notification. So that's the external trigger. The internal trigger might be the feeling of being stressed out. The internal trigger might be the feeling of wanting to feel connected. Let me say that one more time. If you're on the phone, if you're somebody who gets constantly distracted by your phone, one of the major internal triggers is your desire to feel connected. Why is that? Because social media connects you with current events. It connects you with the people around you and people that you love and care about. A lot of people that you don't care about or even know. It connects you. Back in the day, they didn't have this problem. This is a new type of problem. This is a problem that is literally less than 15, 20 years old. It's a very, 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 very new problem. So when it comes to this problem, you have to think about modern solutions. So if that is a problem for you, there's numerous things you can do about it. Very simple thing. Just press this button right here. Mute your notifications. If you know that you're somebody who typically is triggered to go on your phone and then look for, when you get a notification, oh look, let me see who wants me, who finds me important today. You then click on your phone. It's not even there's somebody messaging you. It's one of the apps that you've downloaded giving you a notification to bring you back to the app. By the way, that's what apps do. You can also go to the notification center, turn off the settings for the notifications for anything that's unimportant. I highly recommend you doing that if you haven't done it already. Now, that is reducing your exposure to the triggers, right? Because the internal trigger, not all of the time you can really change that. It's quite difficult to change. But the external trigger, you can change that very easily. Just by removing it from your environment, by limiting your access to it. If it's, you find yourself snacking a lot, don't buy the snacks. Don't leave snacks in your cupboard. Full stop. Or if you are going to leave a snack, aim to buy healthy ones. Aim to buy oranges and mangoes and grapes, melons, something. That's the way how you can change that though, right? So, and that's just a very, very, very minor decision, but it does drive an incredible amount of different results. One thing that I used to do in the past was I used to buy instead of buying like sweets and savory snacks like biscuits and stuff like that, I would actually buy sweet peppers and I'll buy hummus. And if I get snackish, I'm getting hummus and I'm getting sweet peppers and cucumber and I'm dipping that into the hummus and that's my snack. And you know what? That helped me to lose so much weight. So much weight. And the way we want to do is also reward the new routine. So let's say, for example, if you're tracking this routine, right, you want to make sure that this is something that you have established. You might then create something on a whiteboard. You might have a habit tracker of some sort, whether it's on Notion. I always prefer physical in person so you can actually see it as you walk past places, you frequent places. And then just reward yourself for it. If you hit 7 days out of this week, you do the same thing, or you replace successfully every single day for this next week, or every single day that you replace this same habit, you're going to treat yourself to something. So maybe that thing might be, for example, it doesn't have to be anything major, It could be something as simple as celebrating a small win. A simple way how you can celebrate a small win. Smile, look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself, I'm proud of you. Well done. Good job. You did so well today. Keep up the good work. When was the last time you heard those words? And the craziest part is you'll realize that you don't need other people to give you those words. You can be the one who gives those words to yourself. So once you realize that, you can actually start using that as something that gives you a trigger. Do you know how much more happier you will feel as you do that? You'll feel so much happier. So in the beginning stages though of creating this new routine based upon the cue that you had previously, you will have to rely on that prefrontal cortex. You will have to make decisions consciously in the beginning stages, because right now you have another habit, so you have to override that habit. That's going to take an incredible amount of awareness. We're going to go into that in a moment. But you need to decrease the friction between you and the new routine and increase the friction between you and the previous routine. When I say increasing the friction, I mean making it harder for you to engage in that previous routine. That's what I mean by that. And you can do that very easily. You can do it very simply. It might take a little bit of initial thinking power and brain power to then decide on how you may do that, but it's something that you can do. And the moment you start to do it, you're going to start to see that major change in yourself. You're going to finally start to see the results, and you're going to slowly build up that repetition, and that's when the myelination process begins, and that's when you start to actually turn the same thing that you used to consciously think about doing into something that you unconsciously think about doing. Because the main issue is that you can't remove bad habits. You can't flush them out your system. Scientifically speaking, they stay in your brain circuits. That's why it's easy to fall back into those bad habits. But what you can do is you can disrupt them, you can replace them, you can override them. And with repetition, you're basically rewiring your brain to move closer towards the action that you were previously consciously taking, that now becomes an unconscious habit. And that's a sweet spot. When something becomes unconscious, that's when it becomes part of your system. Which is, and whatever becomes part of your system becomes a major cog into why and how you got to the result that you're currently receiving. Think about that for a second. Now, as I mentioned, you need awareness, right? So awareness. This is paired up with journaling. Journaling is key. If you don't journal things, you're always going to miss out on key information. Because as you journal, you're going to realize certain things come from certain places. You're going to realize certain decisions that you make come from a place of hurt, a place of trauma, a place of, you know, when somebody told you when you was 5 years old that you was incapable of doing something. It's some stupid shit. It happens all the time. In fact, journaling looks different for everybody. One way how I personally journal, it's not always in a book. I have many different journals. This is one of my journals that I mainly put ideas into. But every now and then, for my other journal, I may write down things that I'm currently going through. I might analyze a little bit about what I'm going through. Why am I going through that? I also use something. I highly recommend you guys start using this. Let me see if I can actually show you guys this. So there's a particular. Let me scroll up so you can look. There you go. So this is from 22nd July 2020. Let me read out what the title says. Analyzing my lack of action / confidence. 2020, this is 5 years ago. Very vividly, I was sitting down in a park local to my house after doing some pull-ups and after doing some running around the park. I was really focused on changing my habits. One of the things I realized though is that every time when I would be faced with opportunity, I would self-sabotage. I wouldn't act upon things. And that meant that I kept on missing out on the results that would have happened if I just acted upon it. That had me feeling very frustrated. That had me put in a position where I'm constantly staying at the same level. So do you know what I did? I opened up that voice memo app and I just spoke into my phone. As if I'm talking to somebody on the phone. I'm just talking. Just a thought journal. Just speaking. Not caring about what I say. Not caring about who might listen to it. Not caring about whatever. I'm only caring about just releasing. Every small, whatever came to my mind, I said it. I'm not thinking about what to say. This isn't a science project. This isn't English class, or you know, in secondary school when they made you do a language class and you had to do like a language assessment and you had to study something to say and you have to say it's not that. You're speaking from the heart, so you gotta say whatever comes into your brain. Just release it, because everything that's coming to your brain, this is what's in the subconscious mind. That's gonna tell you things. I realized for me that a major part of my lack of action and lack of confidence came from childhood pain. It came from situations as a child where unfortunately, you know, when I would attempt certain things, I would be scrutinized for doing it incorrectly. Maybe even beaten for it. Maybe even scolded for it. Sent to my room, whatever it may be. It can be as minor as that. So that, oh, no, you didn't do it properly, therefore you're not going to get paid for it. Because my dad used to pay me to do certain chores. Like, for example, weed in the front garden, he would try to encourage me to do it by paying me, right? He would say, oh, I'll give you £20, £10, whatever it may be. I'm like, of course, I'll run that. If I didn't do a good job, what does he do? He doesn't pay me. No, he did a shit job. I'm not paying you today. How did that impact my confidence? That made me lose confidence in myself in certain areas. It's a very minor thing, but you'll be shocked at how some of these minor things manifest as we get older, because then you start to find more evidence about that thing, about the belief system that thing allowed you to form. That belief system helped allow me to form a negative belief system cycle that told me that I wasn't worth it, that I had a lack of confidence, and that I'm not enough, and that whatever I do just doesn't work. So what happens? I then don't show up. I then don't go to school. I bunk school. When I'm at school, I'm sleeping during the lessons, and when I'm going through my exams, I don't put in the effort. I'm not revising for them. What happens? I don't get the grades I'm looking for. What happens? That reinforces that same belief system, and then I carry that into other areas later on in life. It's a snowball effect. It really is a snowball effect. You'll be shocked at how many snowballs you have that's not melted. You thought it melted time ago. It did not melt. Boy, the temperature in there is cold. It's rock hard. That's not a snowball. That's an ice ball by this point. So you have to melt that ice ball down and say, you know what? I don't agree with this. This is something that doesn't align me anymore. I'm gonna sacrifice that belief system. It's not part of me anymore. It's not part of where I'm going to. What happens? That all comes from journaling. If you're not journaling, you're playing about. You're not serious about where you're going to next. That journaling allows you to have that reflection that then leads to awareness. The awareness leads to a decision. Decision is what leads to change, right? Stepping into the unknown, making a decision that you haven't made before, and actually committing to that decision. That's how you make that change. Mindfulness is then also important because mindfulness is like a leg of awareness, where if you can become aware of this cue, you can then, again, as I mentioned before, you can increase friction, which then allows you to actually remove things from your environment. That then makes it more easier for you to then align yourself and redirect your focus to the new routine that you've put in place for yourself, which then leads to the new outcome that you're trying to create for yourself. You can then also do breath work. Breath work helps a lot. Breath work allows you to calm your central nervous system down, your limbic system. You no longer go from survival mode. Now you're back into calm. Now you believe that you're safe. Now your body's like, okay, I'm in control of my decisions here. I can make the right decision now. I had bad anger issues when I was a kid. Breath work changed that for me. Be able to deeply breathe and to reground myself through my breath allow me to no longer lash out and allow me to control myself in certain actions in certain places where it might usually cause me to act out. It can also give you that same time away to also delay certain decisions, because a lot of the time we're making these decisions emotionally rather than from conscious thought. So if you recognize a certain cue, you can now say, cool, you know what, I'm not going to do anything for the next 5 seconds. Just that 5 seconds alone can change everything. That 5 seconds delay can literally be the difference between you taking action and not taking action. It's very weird. But if you just tell yourself 5 second delay, 10-minute delay, 1 minute delay, as long as it's even something as minimal as 2 seconds, it can change. It can absolutely change the decisions that follow. 100% can change the routine. That's another thing that you can do, right? Also, with this awareness, you can also track things. Tracking is key. Tracking is data. Data allows you to know if you're engaging with things in the right way, if it's leading to that result you're looking for, or if you're straying further away from it. It can also allow you to see if you really are staying consistent with the new decisions that you've created for yourself. Without data, you'll always be lost. You'll always be blind. Collect data. It's the reason why data is the most expensive thing, it's the most valuable thing in today's economy. That's why every single company that's a technological company, they're harvesting data. ChatGPT, Alphabet, right? So we're talking Google, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. What do? They collect data. That's why these companies are worth billions, because they know who's who and what's going on, what content you engage with, what products you want. That's data, because guess what? They sell that to the next company. But anyway, that's a conversation for a different day. You want to track yourself like you're one of these companies are. Track yourself. Find out exactly what you're doing, how often you're doing it. and you'll see the consistency. And also one thing as well, this also is very encouraging too, because you might also see that long term you're actually seeing changes. Because at first, short term, you're gonna relapse into the old mistakes that you made, the old habits that you have. That's normal. That's gonna happen. You're at in beginner stages. You'll find an uphill battle. So you're gonna make the same mistakes. You're gonna fall back into old cycles. It's gonna happen, guaranteed. But one thing that you can do is when you're actually tracking the data to see what's going on, you then have the opportunity to observe. Maybe in week 1, 7 days of the week, you might make this habit once a day. That previous habit, right? That previous week you was highly focused on it. Maybe hit 6 days out of the 7 days. One of those days you slipped up. The next week you hit 5 days out of the 7 days. Maybe 2 days you slip up. You course correct. The following week after that, you're back up to 6 days. So 6 days of the week, you hit the target right, you done the right decision. And you can then see that it dipped down slightly, but then it goes back up. Then you can see the week after that, then you completely removed all of those mistakes. Every single day you stuck to it, 7 out of 7. The week after that, 7 out of 7. The week after that, maybe it dips down to 6 out of 7. Maybe you have 1 day that slips up. Maybe you have 2 days. Maybe you crash out and it's back down to 3. But then you see a slow build up the week after week after week after week after week, all the way back up to 7 out of 7. Now, if it's a habit that you're doing multiple times a day, that's even more impactful. If it's a habit that you really are, like borderline addiction, that's also incredible as well, because now you can really see that, okay, rather than you starting off at 6 out of 7 days, now you start off at 1 out of 7 if you're lucky. Every single day was borderline a relapse. But then the next week, maybe it was 2 out of the days you was able to stick to the plan. Week after that, 3 out of 3. Week after that, 4 out of 4. Week after that, maybe stay at 4 out of 4. Week after that, maybe it's 6 out of 7. Do you see how you're slowly changing the habits? And then you get to a point when it's every day is a 7 out of 7. You have to give yourself grace. You have to give yourself the forgiveness to understand that you're going to make the same mistakes repeatedly at times. The main issue is if you make the same mistakes repeatedly, you don't actually assess why you made that mistake. And then increase the friction between you and that trigger that caused you to make that same mistake. And decreasing the friction toward the right thing that you want to do. That's when there can be problems if you're not doing that part. Because that part of the process is important. It's review and adaptation. And then you can also give yourself those smaller rewards as you hit those targets. Whether it's a short-term reward or a long-term reward. You also celebrate those smaller wins along the way. Let's say, for example, you know what? I could have crashed out and I could have done a whole situation where none of the days for the rest of the week I followed through. But guess what? I was crashing out for the week until Thursday. Thursday hit, I recognized it. I made the change that following day. I stuck to the plan. I'm proud of you. That is a win. The fact that you were able to recognize your mistakes and then make the changes based upon what those mistakes are and realign yourself with what your true goal is, that is a win. But guess what? You don't praise yourself for it because in your eyes, it's not big enough. It's not good enough. But I'm here to tell you, it's more than good enough. That is literally the first step that allows you to make those bigger wins. That's phenomenal if you're doing that. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Act like it's not important. Act like it's insignificant. It's significant to you, so therefore it's significant. But all in all, that's how you want to overcome these different cycles. So all I want you to leave off with this is I really want you to think about how you can actually change your cycles, your outcomes. I'm not sure what your outcomes are they're trying to achieve for yourself, but I want you to think about how you can change those 3 different things, right? The cue, routine, reward. And if you do that, what is the outcome that's going to come from that? What is the outcome that's going to come from that? And how can you make those changes that aligns you with the outcome they're looking for? Whereas for your relationship to improve, maybe you and your partner are arguing every single day. That can become a habit too. A lot of the time it stems from something deeper. But perhaps there's a certain way that you can actually look at this objectively and think about how you can solve this problem together. And you can change the routine rather than experiencing this trigger that then triggers into an argument. What can we do to redirect this? What's the new reward? Or how can we make sure we reach the same reward without compromising our values, without strangling each other or whatever it may be? As long as, obviously, I hope you guys aren't doing that, but you never know, right? I can go deep. So, with that being said, though, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and drop a comment below. Like, what is it that you're looking to change? What is it that you're looking to introduce into your universe and allow you to actually recreate for yourself? Because there's something that you have been preventing yourself from recreating. So I want you to understand, like, and drop a comment below, like, what are you currently doing? But what's the new, most importantly, what is the new routine? What is the new routine? Don't worry about the old one, in fact. What is the new routine? Let's refocus. Because too many people concern themselves with what's happened in the past and listen, if you're not learning from it, doesn't really matter, does it? So what are you doing today to make that difference? For some people, it might even be something as simple as running back to that same partner or same person, that same situationship, and they treat you like you're inferior to them and trying to manipulate you, gaslight you. I was talking to a friend the other day, and they were telling me about that situation, how that was happening. I said, look, you need to change the routine. You need to change what happens. You need to do something you've never done before. In this instance, it was block that motherfucker. You know what I mean? Block that motherfucker. Move on. They're treating you how you want to be treated, and their situationship, you don't owe them nothing. That's a conversation for another day again. But, we might actually explore that concept in the future. Right? People who are trying to manipulate you and how they may act, because narcissists and manipulators, they act very similar in easy to identify patterns. And once you're able to identify what their patterns are, you're able to then put your barriers up where you need to put your barriers up and move accordingly. So maybe you might have to do a video that in future, but regardless, until then, make sure you drop us a subscribe, drop a like if you found this valuable, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. And I hope you guys are able to gain some sort of value from this, and this is a starting point for that new change and that new version of you that you've been looking for, because you deserve that. You deserve what's on the other side of the action that stands between you being here right now, where you are right now, and to who you're going to become after this video, after you take the actions. You deserve that so much, you don't even understand it. But the only way how you can show yourself that you deserve it is by following through with action. That's the only way, and you can't prove that to yourself until you give yourself the evidence. So let's give yourself the evidence, man. Let's do it. See you guys soon, man. As a win with that. See you guys, man.